Hi, I'm Tony Seelow with Larson Co-op here. I am one of the precision techs down here at our YieldPoint facility. Today I'm going to be talking about proper shimming on opener disc and as well as maintenance on row units and stuff like that for planters for this upcoming spring. So first I'm going to talk about is proper shimming on your opening disc. On this John Deere unit right here, proper opening disc should be about 2 inches in gap. And what I mean by that is you take 2 standard business cards right here and you get down into the wedge right here. You stick 1 card in. There we go. Just a little bit. Take a second card. Plug it in there. And right there. On the John Deere and Kinsey disc, you want to have at least 2 inches of gap right here. If you have more than 2 inches, you obviously got to shim it out with a single shim. Now to shim out properly, you want most of them to be equal shims on each side on the disc. So we got our 2 inches here. You just take a tape measure and measure in between to get that 2 inches. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm at about 2 1/4, which is okay. Now you want to do this on 4 different spots on the disc itself. So on planter maintenance itself, what you want to look for on the row unit is up by the U-bolts here on the frame itself. You want to look for to make sure they are all tight, as well as there is no broken U-bolts. If you do have loose ones, torque them down. On the bracket itself through here, you want to look for fractures, bends, cracks of any way through the frame, because that could cause you headaches through the year. Next, we're going to look at the parallel arms. You want to take and lift the row unit itself without busting your back and give it a shake to make sure there is no slop in the parallel arms itself. If there is, replace the bushings in the upper and the lower parallel arm. Sometimes also with bushing in there, it still can egg out where the bolts are. And in that case, you want to replace the parallel arms. Next, we're going to look at the shank itself. We want to look for any kind of fracturing or breaks in the shank itself, and also step back from your planter once and just take a look to make sure your shanks aren't twisted in any way. The main parts where they're going to crack is up where they bolt up to this W or goalpost bracket itself, and occasionally in the back through here. After you've done the shank, you want to look at your tail section through here. On the block, stop block, you want to look at to where the bushing is for the tails. These tend to egg out over time, and if you get a lot of slop in play, your closing system is not going to straddle the seed furrow where it should be. So would you like to replace that? You want to look at your T-handles and make sure they're not broke, as well as the spring in between to make sure the spring is not broke. When it comes to the closing wheels, you want to make sure there is no seized up bearings or any major play in your wheels, because that'll cause improper closing. You also want to look at the outside of your wheels, the exterior of it. Check the rubber, make sure it's not all chewed away, as well as not looking at any cracks through the wheel itself. Obviously it is broken anyway, replace it. Another thing to look at too is your scrapers for your opener disc too, for wear points and improper wear. You want to make sure there is good contact to the seed disc itself. Now if there's too much pressure on these, you can bend these out a little bit so it does not create warping, because that will change your spacing up here if there's too much pressure on this disc. So one to check is your gauge wheel itself to make sure there's no fractures or cracks through the hub, as well as no damage to the rubber itself through the system. Now when it comes to the gauge wheel arm also, you want to make sure there is no major dishing happening inside of here, because that will disrupt and change your depth for the unit itself. You also want to check the bearing in here, make sure there's no slop in play. If there is, you will have to replace the gauge wheel. To properly shim the gauge wheel, get it on the unit here, proper shimming of the gauge wheel itself. Get the gauge wheel in operation of where your depth should be. and you want just a little contact with the opener disc itself through here. If it's a big space in between is where you can get your dry matter to go into your furrow before it closes. And you also want to check the gauge wheel arm out of the shank itself with the bearing inside or bushing in here to make sure there's no slop in play. Obviously I got this loose right now, it's going to have a little play, but once it's all torqued down and everything like that, you shouldn't have any play with inside your bushing here. If so, that will need to be replaced. Obviously, you want to check over your meters, everything like that, make sure there's nothing cracked through that, and any kind of wiring. Obviously, you can see there's a little bit of a nick right here, should be okay, but any exposed wires and stuff like that, you want to get those checked. That could cause issues down the road. I hope this is some helpful tips to help you with your spring planting and getting your planter ready. If you have any set questions or anything you need to ask about, feel free to call us at CHS Co-op at our YieldPoint office, and we'll be glad to help you.